30 days. That is how long the law required a widow to mourn her husband. 30 days of wearing dark clothes and staying inside. 30 days of public grief and private tears. 30 days before life could begin again. For Bathsheba, those 30 days must have felt like an eternity. And for David, they could not pass quickly enough. This is the story of a wedding that was really a cover-up and a secret that God would not allow to stay hidden. I am the storyteller. I preserve and share stories of kings and queens, of prophets and warriors, of love and betrayal, stories that changed the world. And today, I will share one of them with you. This is episode 4 of 6 in the story of David and Bathsheba. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, the full playlist is in the description below. I recommend starting from episode 1 to get the complete story. If you enjoy epic and dramatic stories, like this video and follow the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this saga. The mourning period passed slowly. Each day felt the same. Bathsheba sat in her house, the windows covered, the mirrors turned to the wall, following all the rituals of grief. Neighbors brought food. Friends came to sit with her in silence. They spoke of Uriah's bravery. They called him a hero. They said he had died with honor, fighting for Israel. And Bathsheba listened to it all, her hands folded in her lap, her face carefully composed. What did she feel during those 30 days? Did she genuinely grieve the husband who had been taken from her? Or did she already know the truth? Did she suspect what David had done? We cannot know what thoughts passed through her mind as she sat in that darkened house, one hand occasionally moving to her belly where the child continued to grow. And David counted the days like a prisoner counting down to freedom. He visited Bathsheba once, early in the mourning period, to offer his condolences. It was expected. It was proper. A king honoring a fallen soldier by comforting his widow. But when he stood in her doorway, looking at her pale face and swollen eyes, when their gazes met for just a moment, something passed between them. Knowledge, complicity, shared guilt. Neither of them spoke of it. Neither of them dared. But it was there, hanging in the air like smoke. Finally, the 30 days ended. Bathsheba removed her mourning clothes. She uncovered the windows. She turned the mirrors back around. And almost immediately, David sent word. He wanted to marry her. It was framed as an act of kindness, of royal generosity. The king taking pity on a widow. The king honoring a fallen warrior by protecting his wife. The king ensuring that Uriah's child would be born into the royal household and given every advantage. When the announcement was made, people smiled. They called David merciful. They called him generous. They called him a good king who cared for his people, even in their grief. No one questioned the timing. No one counted the months. No one suspected. The wedding was simple, as befitted a widow's remarriage. No great celebration. No public festival. Just a quiet ceremony with a few witnesses, the words spoken, the rituals performed, and Bathsheba became David's wife. She moved from her small house into the palace. She was given fine clothes and jewelry. She was attended by servants. She ate at the king's table. From the outside, it looked like a beautiful ending to a tragic story. A widow rescued by a kind king. But inside the palace walls, things were far more complicated. Bathsheba said little. She moved through her new life like a ghost, quiet and watchful. She was polite to David's other wives, respectful to the palace staff, dutiful in all things. But there was a distance in her eyes, a guardedness. She was living in the house of the man who had destroyed her life, whether by force or by conspiracy. She was carrying a child conceived in sin. She was married to a man who might have murdered her husband, and she had no power, no voice, no choice but to accept it all with grace and silence. And David tried to convince himself that everything was fine. He had solved the problem. Bathsheba was his wife now. The child would be legitimate. The scandal had been avoided. Life could return to normal. He threw himself into his duties as king. He made decisions. He settled disputes. He planned military campaigns. He wrote psalms. He did everything he had always done, trying desperately to feel like the man he used to be. But something had changed. Something fundamental had broken inside him. He could not pray the way he once had. The words felt hollow, empty. He could not approach God with the same freedom and joy. There was a barrier now, a wall of sin and guilt that separated him from the presence he had once known so intimately. He still performed the rituals. He still made the sacrifices. He still spoke the prayers. But they were just words now, just motions. The connection was gone. And in the deep hours of the night, when sleep would not come, David knew why. He had sinned against God. He had taken what was not his. He had murdered an innocent man. He had broken nearly every commandment. And though he tried to push the knowledge away, though he tried to bury it under the busyness of ruling a kingdom, he could not escape it. The months passed. Bathsheba's pregnancy became visible. Palace servants whispered, but not with suspicion. They whispered with pity for a widow who would raise her dead husband's child. They whispered with approval for a king who would give that child a home. The deception was complete. The secret was safe. Or so David believed. But far from the palace, in a simple house on the outskirts of Jerusalem, another man was receiving a very different kind of message. His name was Nathan. He was a prophet, one of the few men in Israel who spoke directly with God. Nathan was not part of the palace court. He did not flatter the king or seek royal favor. He lived simply, prayed constantly, and delivered God's messages whether they were pleasant or painful. And the message he was receiving now was the most difficult he had ever been asked to deliver. It came to him in the night, as these things often did. A voice, a presence, a certainty that filled his mind and heart until there was no room for doubt. God was speaking, and what God was saying made Nathan's blood run cold. The Lord knows everything David has done. The adultery with Bathsheba, the murder of Uriah, every sin, every deception, every evil choice. Nothing was hidden, nothing was forgotten, and judgment was coming. Nathan sat in the darkness, trembling. He was being asked to confront the king, to accuse the most powerful man in Israel of adultery and murder. It was dangerous. Kings had killed prophets for less. But Nathan knew he had no choice. When God speaks, you obey. When God sends you with a message, you deliver it, regardless of the cost. So Nathan prayed. He asked for wisdom. He asked for courage. He asked for the right words to break through David's defenses and reach his heart. And slowly, as the night passed, a plan formed in his mind. He would not accuse David directly. Not at first. Instead, he would tell a story, a parable, something that would make David judge himself before he realized what he was doing. As dawn broke, Nathan rose and prepared himself. He put on his prophet's robes. He fasted. He prayed. And then he set out for the palace, carrying a message that would shatter a king's world. But he did not go immediately. He waited. He watched. He observed David from a distance, studying the king's habits, his moods, his routines. Nathan needed to understand the man he was about to confront. He needed to see past the crown and the power to the broken soul underneath. What Nathan saw disturbed him. David was going through the motions of being king, but the light had gone out of his eyes. He smiled when expected, but the smiles never reached his face. He spoke of justice and righteousness, but his words rang hollow. He was a man drowning in guilt, desperately trying to pretend he was fine. And Bathsheba. Nathan watched her too. He saw how she moved through the palace like a prisoner in a golden cage, how she touched her growing belly with a mixture of love and fear, how she looked at David with eyes that held too many secrets. Nathan understood. This was not a love story. This was a tragedy. Two people trapped by sin, by power, by circumstances they had created and could not escape. And the child growing inside Bathsheba was innocent, caught in the middle of adult sins and royal deceptions. Nathan's heart broke for all of them. For David, who had fallen so far. For Bathsheba, who had lost everything. For the child, who would pay for sins he did not commit. But Nathan's pity did not change his mission. God had spoken. Judgment had been pronounced, and Nathan was the instrument through which that judgment would be delivered. Days turned into weeks. Nathan prepared. He refined his parable, testing each word, making sure it would cut straight to David's heart. He prayed constantly, asking God to give him courage when the moment came. He knew what he was about to do was dangerous. He knew David could have him killed with a single word. But he also knew that some truths must be spoken, regardless of the cost. Some sins must be confronted. Some kings must be held accountable. And Nathan had been chosen for this task. Inside the palace, David continued his charade of normalcy. He held court. He made judgments. He pretended to be the righteous king his people believed him to be. But at night, alone in his chambers, the facade crumbled. He paced. He wept. He tried to pray but could not find the words. The guilt was eating him alive, but he could not confess. To confess would be to lose everything. So he buried it deeper. He built the walls higher. He perfected the mask he wore in public. And he waited for the child to be born, believing that once the baby arrived healthy and whole, he could finally put all of this behind him. But David did not know that his carefully constructed world was about to explode. He did not know that Nathan was coming. He did not know that God had seen everything and would not let it stand unpunished. He thought he was safe. But some secrets cannot be buried. Some sins cannot be covered. Some truths refuse to stay hidden. And God sees everything. The day was coming. Soon, Nathan would walk into the palace. Soon he would stand before the king. Soon he would tell a story about a rich man and a poor man, about theft and injustice, about sin and judgment. And David, hearing that story, would condemn himself out of his own mouth. He would demand justice for a fictional crime, never realizing he was describing his own sin. And then Nathan would speak 3 words that would shatter everything. You are that man. David thought he had buried his secret with Uriah. He thought he was safe. He thought no one knew. But God knew everything, and he was about to send a messenger, a prophet with a parable, a man with the courage to confront a king. And when that confrontation came, David's world would collapse. The carefully built facade would crumble. The hidden sins would be dragged into the light. And the king who thought he had gotten away with murder would discover that with God, nothing stays hidden forever. Turn on notifications to be notified when the next chapter is released. And if you have a friend who would enjoy this story, share this video. See you in the next chapter.